There was two monumental upsets last week. USC upset the #1 ranked team in the country, UCLA, and Uconn upset a #2 ranked South Carolina team. I'm absolutely stunned by the Uconn game. I gotta give credit to Uconn. I was real bold about South Carolina putting the smackdown on them, and they made me look real crazy. There's one aspect of Uconn I've been critical of all season. The fact that the non-Page and Sarah players routinely struggled against higher-level competition. This was not the case at all this game. Caitlin Chen was a legitimate threat on offense, Jana had a very strong start to the game, and Ashlyn's shade 9 points were early in the game when it was still somewhat competitive. But the biggest difference maker was by far AZ Fudd. South Carolina had absolutely no answer for her. It didn't matter who was guarding her, she was giving them that work. She repeatedly lost her defender to get open looks, and she was taking people off the dribble. AZ Fudd needed this type of game to be a first-round pick. If she came out here and got completely shut down, I really do not see a scenario where she's taken in the first round. But if she keeps playing like this, she's going to shoot up the draft boards. If this is the type of Uconn team we see going forward, they would easily be back in the Final Four. A healthy Paige Bueckers has never missed a Final Four in her career, so it definitely would not be a shock if they return. One thing that amazes me about the dialogue surrounding Paige is that people expect her to play point guard for the Dallas Wings, but criticize her when she plays like a point guard. Paige only having 12 points wasn't her being passive. It was her recognizing that other players had the hot hand. Her having 10 assists to only 3 turnovers is proof of that. That's exactly what a point guard is supposed to be doing. To say this was a collapse by South Carolina would be the understatement of the century. Even if people had Uconn winning, no one predicted them absolutely embarrassing them on their home court. It's one thing to lose. It's another to get completely dominated from start to finish. I'm still in shock. This game was so uncharacteristic for South Carolina. They gave up an insane amount of open looks, the perimeter defense was suspect, and they got absolutely dominated on the boards. Uconn almost doubled the rebounding total, which is a recipe for disaster. It was just as big of a disaster on offense as it was on defense. South Carolina's biggest weakness is that most of their players struggle to score without ideal conditions. What I mean by that is most of the players score by taking open shots, cutting to the basket for easy layups, or getting favorable post position. Malaysia Fulwiley and Joyce Edwards are the only players who can consistently make difficult shots and cook people in ISO situations. They don't need a play designed for them or a wide open look. You just give them the ball and they put it in the hoop. Joyce and Fulwiley outscored the entire starting 5 for South Carolina and are the points per game leaders for this team. But because they come off the bench, the slow starts continue to be an issue. Uconn couldn't do anything with Joyce Edwards. Despite the height advantage, she dominated Jana El-Alfi. I'll close my thoughts on this game by saying that I really liked what I saw from Joyce and Sarah. It's clear they are going to be the leaders of the team next year, and this game showed exactly why. But moving on to the USC and UCLA game. What's ironic about this upset is that USC was the team that ruined UCLA's win streak last year, and it happened again a year later. I don't know what else to say. Juju, she's just something else. She looked like a straight-up superhero out there. She was the best offensive and defensive player out there, and it wasn't even close. She scored half of her team points with 38 and 8 of the team's 13 blocks. Juju is a rare class of player where it doesn't matter who you are going against. If she's on your team, there's a chance of winning. Juju's defense is not talked about when she's getting compared to other players enough. Yeah, she's not going to have the efficiency of other elite scorers, but they aren't providing nearly the defensive value that Juju brings. The Juju we saw in this game and the Uconn game was on a completely different level. And that's the version of Juju they are going to need during March Madness. It's a lot to ask of a 19-year-old, but if anyone can do it, it's Juju. What makes USC winning this game so scary is that Kiki Irifen didn't even play well. If they get going at the same time during the tournament, the sky is the limit. UCLA ended up losing the game, but I don't feel any less about them than I do before. There's not another player in the country that can recreate what Juju did against UCLA. And defensively, Texas is the only team that can do USC's defensive strategy at the same level. Texas is the only team that has waves of bigs that can produce the same value defensively as what USC has, and they could use 6'2" Madison Booker as a help side defender. But again, not many teams can do something like that. UCLA losing this game was a blessing in disguise. Things were getting too easy in the Big Ten. They could play sloppy and still bulldoze whoever they were playing. Getting hit in the face by a tough USC team will force them to lock in and improve what they're weak on. Tamia Gardner has to get a lot more involved in the offense. Her elite shooting ability allowed UCLA to punish teams that double or tripled Lauren Betts, but they completely neglected her in the offense. She just had an amazing game against Michigan State recently, but when Lauren comes back, they still need to make sure she gets her shots. Janiah Barker needs to be more aggressive. She had a good game against USC, but this should have been an easy 20-point game. Kiki couldn't do anything with her, but she didn't attack her enough. And I would argue that's the case in a lot of the games UCLA plays. She's too big and skilled to not be giving more on a consistent basis. Their rematch against USC on the last game of the regular season will set the tone going into the postseason. We'll find out if they improved on anything or if they didn't learn from their mistakes. But that's all I got for today. I'm very curious how you all feel about these four teams. Are South Carolina and UCLA still legitimate title threats? Is what we saw from USC and Uconn a sign of what's to come? I'd love to hear your thoughts.